Look out, y'all. It's your boy Ashy Knuckles back on the scene, missing in action. Same old shit, right? Man, I ain't purposely staying away from YouTube or anything like that, but boxing it got me in a state where I really don't even give a damn to even want to cover the sport, go to the gym, go to the fights. Guaranteed, I'm gonna watch the fights. I'm just not. I lost a lot of interest because all the bullshit, the politics, all these fly by night guys coming into the boxing world trying to cover it, don't have no knowledge, no history. And then, maybe their website is successful and they get credentials to fight, go in there asking dumbass questions, questions that have no relevance. Or you can tell by their line of questioning that they don't have no history. So it's like everything they got to do with boxing on that front just make me so bored with the shit. So I ain't really been interested, bro. But I'm here and I want to talk about the Canelo Lara fight. Um, I didn't score the fight, so for those that say one guy won or the other guy won, I don't have a quarrel with none of that. I'm not against you guys or the way you score, but there wasn't a robbery, and my whole thing is I got to be consistent. Even back in the days when I was on the radio show, um, in a fight of this magnitude, when we're talking about pay-per-views, it's an event. It's not just a match. We already know that the business side of boxing dominates the sport more than the sport side of boxing. That's been an argument of mine for a long time, and it's not going to change just simply because Ashley Knuckles wants it to change or the diehard boxing fan wanted to change because we seem to support the sport even when bullshit dominates the sport. That's how loyal we are as fans of the sport. But my whole thing is this: we already know that the business of boxing is not friendly to those fighters who have a slick style. Guys who box on the move more than they throw punches. And that's just for a regular fight. So when you get in a fight of this magnitude, where the suits show up, the cameras, the stars, you know, and you're not the money guy, you're not the guy who the promotional muscle is behind, you have to know what you're up against. Not just the opponent, but the business machine behind your opponent. We all know they've been marketing Canelo Alvarez for a long time, and for good reason. I mean, from their point of view, he has all the intangibles necessary to build a star from scratch. He supposedly has the it factor. What it is, the it factor, no one really knows. But they can only do their due diligence based on what has worked in the past. And what has worked in the past in terms of how they're promoting Canelo is one, he's Mexican. So the Latino market will be there. His looks, he looks like an Irishman, but he's of Mexican descent. So that kind of gives him the crossover appeal that they're hoping to catapult him into the pay-per-view platform on the level of a Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather. He has a crossover appeal because of his looks. And then number three, the boy can fucking fight. You know what I'm saying? He's a strong fighter. He can punch. He can fight. You know what I'm saying? So when you got all those three things working for you, that kind of gives you an idea why he has so much promotional muscle. But this is not something that we learned overnight. This is something that we've been knowing back when he wasn't fighting nobody, blowing guys up and blowing them out. You know, giving them proper seasoning in the pro ranks. Way more seasoning than he needed. I mean, over 40 some odd fights or something. He just turned 24. Just really now getting into his prime. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the research and the due diligence was about in terms of what's necessary to build a star fighter. And of course, you had to get him the fights that complement his style, so it won't make for an ugly fight. Because the fans, regardless if they like you or not, they love great fights more than they like a particular fighter. Well, I say that with tongue in cheek. I mean, it just really depends. We've seen that shit don't matter for some fighters. But anyway, man, when you're the opponent on a big card, even if you're in the main event and you're not the star, you have to know what you're up against. And if you have a style that is conducive of what people regard as boredom when watching a fight, you have to do the things necessary to make the fight appealing. And no matter how much they say you are a runner, if you don't match your ability to move with the ability to throw punches at a higher rate, you're not going to win the fight. Even if the scorecards for everybody else favor you, the judges are not going to. We've seen this. How many times have we seen this in the sport of boxing? It wasn't going to change simply because Lara and Canelo was mixing it up. You know what I'm saying? And my whole thing is this. I've been knowing Team Lara ever since they first came into Houston. I was there when they first showed up at Savannah Gym. Of course, they don't train at Savannah's anymore, but I was there when they first showed up. And, you know, I've been a supporter of Team Lara. You know, Louis the Cubas Jr., cool dude, real cool dude. You know, every time I see him, he show me love. You know what I'm saying? In the gym. And, you know, even though I'm cool with those guys, I don't align myself to no man. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to do like certain guys when they become cool with a fighter. Everything they do, you just supportive of it, even if it's wrong. Or even if in your heart you know those guys will lose or lost a fight. And in saying that, even though I think he did enough to get it on the scorecards, in a fight of this magnitude, you've got to do enough to sway the judges in your favor, because it's not going to be in your favor if you just squeaking by. You're not going to eke out a decision against a marquee fighter, a star, if you will. You're just not going to do it. You got to do enough to say, you know what, I dominated this guy. You know what I'm saying? This guy is nothing in comparison to what I just brought to the table. And even though he was able to make Canelo miss a lot of shots and make him look foolish at times, he wasn't doing enough to make the judges say, you know what, he is the decided winner, because there were a lot of close rounds. And when you fight a star fighter, the close rounds go to the star fighter. Like I said, we've seen this time and time again. And as the opponent, you have to know that going in. And the thing about it is, he was able to make Canelo look so foolish. But the old adage in boxing is make 'em miss, make 'em pay. Not just make 'em miss. You know what I'm saying? And it was a lot of times in a fight, he'd make Canelo miss, and then he'd move clearly to the other side of the ring when it's not necessary. If you can make a miss, when you make a miss, you don't have to go on the other side of the ring. He's already committed to that punch. He missed. Now it's time to punish him. You don't have to move on the other side of the ring. You can use your pivots and move on the other side of the actual fighter himself. So when he resets, he's resetting into a big shot. And that is the difference between Lara's fight with Canelo and Mayweather's fight with Canelo. Because when Mayweather made Canelo miss, there was return fire. You know what I'm saying? Not saying it made it just this spectacular, entertaining event, because it really wasn't. But it was a masterpiece. Mayweather painted Canelo. Painted him. You know what I'm saying? And with Lara versus Canelo, there were a lot of blown opportunities on that front, where the opportunities for him to get his shots off even more so than he did, and he didn't capitalize on it. And what did that do? It didn't do nothing but give Canelo motivation to go after him. And body language says a lot in the sport of boxing. And all that moving let Canelo know that two things were happening. The shots that Canelo were getting in were starting to affect Lara, or Lara just simply did not want to engage. And once Canelo felt that Lara really couldn't hurt him, that's when he went after him, tooth and nail. And that kind of turned the fight into Canelo's favor. So even though at the end of the fight, a lot of Lara fans thought he won and should have won on the scorecards, I don't have a quarrel with the way that. Well, I have I don't like the way that third judge scored the fight. Obviously, he wasn't watching the fight at all, but it was close enough to give it to either fighter. It all depends on what the judges favor. There are four scoring criterias in how you score a fight. And even though Lara dominated on the clean punching category, he could have lost in the effective aggression category. You know what I'm saying? Canelo's effective aggression and going to the body as his primary attack, was it effective? Yes, it made Lara move all over the damn ring for 12 rounds. And basically, it made it look like he refused to engage. You cannot win fight if you don't throw punches. You got to score on throwing punches. Damn the punch stats. You can watch any Ash and Knuckle video. I never say anything about no punch stats. That's just some guy pressing a button. You know what I'm saying? I know what my eyes saw. You know what I'm saying? The fight tells the story. You know, and it just, to me, I thought it was the perfect opportunity for Lara to grab the bull by the horn and just completely dominate the fight. You know what I'm saying? With his superior movement and boxing ability and left hand style. And that's not what how the fight played out. It played out into a close fight that didn't begin as a close fight. It began as just a dominating boxing match. But in my opinion, and no disrespect to Team Lara whatsoever, to me it looked like he kind of gave the fight away. Trying to eke by with a decision. You're not gonna eke by. If you couldn't eke by with a decision against Paul Williams, what would make you think you could eke by with a decision against Canelo when Paul Williams was not even a pay-per-view attraction? You know what I'm saying? So to me, like I said before, you got to know what you're up against when you're in a big fight, a fight of that magnitude, the big promotional push. You know you're Cuban, and you know history has not favored the Cuban style of fighting. Yes, the Cuban school of fighting is a good school, but notice that school is still in Cuba. That school don't dominate boxing inside the United States. You know what I'm saying? And this is the place where you receive your bread at. So you got to do what you got to do to be appealing to the public eye. Because if you can't put asses in seats, 9 times out of 10, the networks are not going to get behind you. And you need that if you want to make some good money in the sport of boxing. I mean, I know you want to be great, but at the end of the day, greatness is not going to pay your bills or feed your kids. It's a double-edged sword. You got to do what you got to do. And for those that are comparing Lara to Guillermo Rigondeaux, it's not even close. Lara moves substantially more than Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux stands in front of his opponent a whole lot more. Rigondeaux stands his ground a whole lot more. And when Rigondeaux moves, he don't move clearly on the other side of the ring. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you do see him move clearly to the other side of the ring, he is getting his second win. It's a fight, and they are human. Nobody has superior conditioning. I mean, we see it with Mayweather, you know what I'm saying? But not everybody is Mayweather, and that doesn't need to be the comparison, because it's just everybody's not going to be like that guy. You know what I'm saying? Mayweather has had superior conditioning since he's been a pro. You never seen him gasp for air, clinch because he needs his second win, or just, you know what I'm saying, just show signs of just utter fatigue. You haven't seen that in any of his fights, but you see that mostly from other guys. Everybody doesn't have this type of conditioning. But Rigondeaux does not move as much as Lara. And I thought Lara was moving away from that type of style. If you see all of his fights, he doesn't do that the whole time. I mean, he didn't move like that when he fought Vanes. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, he boxed on the move against Trout, and that was kind of a boring fight too. But like I said, if you want to be at the highest level of boxing, you got to have a style where the fans will appreciate it. Or if you're going to move like that, you got to increase your work rate. A prime example of this is Jermell Charlo versus Gabe Rosado. Jamel boxed on the move beautifully, but his work rate was high. Every time he got a chance to pop Gabe Rosado in his mouth, he did it. He made him miss and he made him pay, all while boxing on the move. You know what I'm saying? It didn't look like that for Lara versus Canelo. What was it that made it the way that it was? Maybe it was a style of Canelo. Maybe Canelo is a really big puncher, to which a lot of fighters are not giving him his just due, except Mayweather. Mayweather said he can box. Mayweather said he can punch with both hands and he's an intelligent fighter. I'm going to tend to believe the guy who fights. You know what I'm saying? And he dominated Austin Trout, so they ought to let you know. Well, he didn't dominate Austin Trout, but he beat him. He made Austin Trout look bad. They both didn't look too well, but we know who won the fight. So at the end of the day, I don't have a quarrel with the decision. It went how it went. It was a lot of blown opportunities. I feel bad for the boy, for not the boy, for Ronnie Shields. It's like he keep missing out on these big chances to be on this big level like the Robert Garcias, the Freddie Roaches, and whatnot. And he is a very good trainer. And he did tell Lara, use that jab. He could have had that jab pumping a whole lot more. I mean, there's so many things he could have done better. And yeah, there was a lot of things that Canelo could have done better. But at the end of the day, the marquee fighter is always going to have the favoritism, especially in Vegas. So at the end of the day, I don't have a problem with the way the fight went. Um, I love to see Canelo versus any other top 54 pounder if he's going to stay at that weight. He's definitely got to make that weight. I love to see Canelo versus Cotto. I don't want to see Cotto versus Bradley. I think that is a mismatch. I think if Cotto's going to stay at that weight, he should fight another middleweight. If not, drop back down in weight or make a big fight with Canelo or Kirkland or somebody like that. Canelo wants to fight Kirkland. I think that would be a beautiful fight. I think Kirkland's style favors Canelo, but at the same time, Kirkland is not your average brawler. You better have your mind right getting in the ring with that boy. Or you better time him with a big shot and get him out of there early. Because if he survives the first 4 rounds, you're cooked, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So, because he just pours it on as he gets warm. So, at the end of the day, the fight played out the way it did. I hope the powers that be don't freeze Lara out of the boxing game. It could happen, and don't be surprised if it happens. You got to do what you got to do to keep the networks wanting to showcase you on their TV. Nothing is guaranteed in this sport. The big fight he just got against Canelo, that's not a guarantee. You heard from Oscar himself, he did not want that fight. So if Oscar wasn't on dope and getting fist in his ass and he had been on the scene, Lara wouldn't have got that fight. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, you gotta do what you gotta do to put yourself in line for a big fight. And just because you're respected among your peers as one of the best does not guarantee that you will get a big fight. History has shown us that. We saw that with Winky Wright. It wasn't until years later until Winky started getting his shot. And that's only because Shane Mosley dared to be great and took on the fighters who were well respected by their peers but could not get that marquee fight. Like Vernon Forrest, you know what I'm saying? They all knew each other. They was all in the amateurs together. Oscar, Vernon, Shane, Winky Wright. They all were in it. They knew each other. You know what I'm saying? But just because you're a great fighter does not mean you're entitled to a big fight. Look at Mark Tushar Johnson. His whole career he was frozen out of big fights. And he was a dominant fighter. They did not want to see him. And I could start running off the names. And I can bring up hundreds or more fighters in that same category. So look at Juan Manuel Marquez. Look how long for it took him to get him a big fight. He was still dominant way back in the game when Eric Morales was dominating the pay-per-views and the Barreras was dominating the pay-per-views. Juan Manuel Marquez was been there. There was a time when Bob Arum would not even showcase this boy. You know what I'm saying? He had to change his style up just so he can get into a fight, so they'd be interested into it in his fight. He was that dominating, but his style wasn't that conducive of a great entertaining matchup back and forth. tit for tat, if you will. You know, at the end of the day, man, I'm done with this topic. On to the next. On to the next. It's your boy Ash. Deuce.